Zombieland is a beloved movie with a large following that made enough money to make it the highest grossing zombie movie in history. Until that title was taken by Resident Evil Aftermath, and then World War Z. It was memorable and a rare occurrence of a horror comedy that actually worked well. Basically the Shaun of the Dead of the West. So of course the sequel had to be made. And sequels aren't necessarily always a bad thing. Sometimes a second installment can usurp the first. But for every good movie with a good sequel, there are 10 times as many bad sequels. And today's sequel spent a lot of time in the oven. Now I'm not here today to say Double Tap is a bad movie whatsoever. It was serviceable, but compared to the first, it's just really disappointing. Following a failed Amazon TV series pilot and a decade of rumors and buildup, what came of another installment wasn't what I wanted nor expected out of the original 4-star ensemble cast of Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, Emma Stone, and Abigail Breslin. But we got it for what it's worth. But was it worth it? Today, we are discussing why Zombieland 2 is a disappointing sequel. First, we need to go back, all the way back to 2009 to discern why Zombieland was in purgatory for so long with the many bumps in the road that led to Double Tap in 2019. A sequel to the critically successful Zombieland was a no-brainer, and everyone involved, from the writers of Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick to the main actors to much of the creative staff, wanted to make one even with plenty of ideas for it. Even upon wrapping filming of Zombieland, Woody Harrelson ran up to the writers exclaiming, "I've never wanted to do a sequel in the previous movies I've done until this one." It seemed like a fun, lucrative set of movies was in store for all of us. Alongside that came inklings of a TV series mentioned in 2009, while director Ruben Fleischer said he was working on a sequel screenplay while searching for another superstar cameo to make a trend out of the whole Bill Murray thing. By 2011 though, Eisenberg said a sequel wasn't relevant, while Harrelson contradictorily said he was not a sequels kind of guy. At the same time, talks of a Zombieland TV show on CBS were beginning. No doubt because of the insane success of AMC's The Walking Dead making everyone want to do zombies. But what better way to bring Zombieland to TV than bring back the characters from the movie without the actors? People were pissed that the original cast was not coming back, but the characters were. A TV show using the zombie kill of the week formula with the rules and slapstick horror would have been great. Just have a different group of survivors. They had to use the original characters, but could go on without the original actors. When Amazon released the pilot episode of Zombieland the TV series in April of 2013, it was met with heavy backlash. Zombieland, the series, would not be picked up by Amazon, prompting Rhett Reese to say this: "I'll never understand the vehement hate the pilot received from die-hard zombie fans. You guys successfully hated it out of existence. Putting the blame on fans? Really? You do realize people enjoyed the characters and the actors that portrayed them, right? You can't pretend it wasn't given a fair chance either when you replaced your cast. Especially when your first movie was all like, look, we got Bill Murray, whoa! You banked on star power before. And now you want to act all grounded." Obviously, it was because of budget and scheduling issues that the actors had to be replaced. And I get people worked hard on it, but it would have been better to just have a new setting and characters, and eventually, possibly, here's an idea, have the new characters meet up with the movie characters in the sequel, like the Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 survivors did in The Passing. I'm sure it was easier to write around pre-established characters instead of making a completely new set. I'm also sure most story ideas that weren't originally intended for a sequel were repurposed for a TV script, and then, as we'll get into later, were repurposed again for the sequel that we did get. These ideas that were repurposed probably had the OG characters in mind, so using the OG characters was the only way for these writers. But you know what? People wanted more Zombieland, not Timu Tallahassee. Speaking of bringing back the characters, how did things turn out for their return? Following the forgotten failure, 6 years later, the sequel, Zombieland Double Tap, was released. I enjoyed it the first time I watched it as I was riding the social media hype train, but after repeat watches, I felt more and more disappointed. There is a lot that really just left me feeling dissatisfied, but the main thing that really grinds my gears was this. Now, each of the main cast was a flanderized version of themselves that apparently haven't learned or developed in the 6 years that have passed. If you don't know what flanderization is, it's basically when a series takes the small traits of a character and focuses on them more and more until their personality and actions rely only on that trait. Like Ned Flanders being a well-meaning Christian, wholesome neighbor to just being a mega Christian, or Patrick Star going from a lovable goof with dumb moments to just being stupid 24/7. Everyone started acting like how they were shortly after meeting each other in the previous installment, basically their flanderized selves. The first movie made sense as the only living characters we ever see were the four plus Bill Murray as they try to figure out life in the post-apocalypse as a dysfunctional family of zombie killers. They bonded and grew together until it culminated in the end at Pacific Playland, but Tallahassee, Columbus, Wichita, and Little Rock seemed to take that drive off into the nocturnal sunset as a sign to never change whatsoever and instead embrace their most prominent attributes. Tallahassee being a badass that has a lol random obsession out of nowhere all the time, from his love of Elvis to his Native American tribalism, all to harken back to how hell-bent he was on Twinkies before, really acting less of the hard to get along with type, angry at zombies and using anything he can to kill them, and more of the let's do something badass for funsies sake. I do love Tallahassee as a character, and he is honestly the saving grace of Zombieland for me. His redneck one-liners and jabs ring well with me, and he remains rather consistent compared to his other counterparts. His whole idea of killing off the horde of T-800s stems from him being obsessed with his Indian heritage, despite, there being a whole musical montage of his group destroying a Native American gift shop in the first movie. If he was that proud of that heritage, you would think that notion would have come up around then. But as I discuss later, it feels as if it was an episode plot from the defunct series. Something like the group discovering their heritage in a science lab and obsessing over their own genetics. It was nice, however, seeing a slight bit of development in him in regards to his relationship with Little Rock, acting like a father figure towards her after the loss of his son. Kind of wish that was explored more instead of being sidelined to give him a relationship with Nevada to meet a quota of everyone has to have a significant other and being the badass that does the legwork while everyone else kinda squabbles and or acts dumb around him. Columbus being the one-note awkward know-it-all nerd that Jesse Eisenberg consistently plays as he tries to sleep with the first pretty girl that stumbles in front of him in each movie, sloppily going over his nerdy rules, awkwardly trying to execute the way to do them, randomly going about trivia stuff like Eskimos in the intro or presidential factoids. Seems like it was accentuated way more in the sequel, which feels weird that much of his humor and dialogue is so reference-based, considering most media is basically gone and has been for 6 years. Generally, I don't like Columbus as a character, and Zombieland Double Tap went full force into him being the Jesse Eisenberg character acting stereotype. And this far into the zombie apocalypse, and his roles seem more focused on him being a nerd that just left his bedroom and gamer lifestyle a week ago rather than a hardcore survivalist. He hadn't changed at all in the 6 years from then, and literally only serves to be a self-insert for nerds that worked for the types of comedies like Superbad back in that era, but now just shows how grating he can be. Columbus just being the Lisa Simpson of the zombie family that increasingly grates me with his "I'm smart, you should like me, you ain't doing any better, I know this random trivia and knowledge, so I think we know how things should be. Yeah, I'm also gonna talk awkwardly like this." It kind of worked in the first movie as a folly to Tallahassee, but here, no. Wichita grandpa seems to not have developed just as much as Columbus. In the first film, it made sense for her character to be how she is. A cunning drifter, looking after her sister, tricking people to get what they want in order to survive, while holding distrust for everyone else. While also being the "I'm not your typical girl" archetype the late 2000s loved for its movies, while also being the "we can't trust anybody else but my sister" type. That is, until the heroic nerd self-insert comes into the picture, so she's like, "I can trust him. No, I can't. Yes, I can. No, I can't. Yes, I can," over and over again. In the first movie, she openly fell in love with Columbus, despite him advancing on her when she was drunk and high and he was sober, and accepting Tallahassee as a group. She would spearhead abandoning them at Bill Murray's house to avoid a romantic connection just to go to an amusement park. An insanely stupid and rushed decision to distract herself and please her younger sister. But it made sense because it was still near the start of the zombie apocalypse, and they ended up realizing how dumb that decision was, and they rode off into the sunset. Until they get to the White House 6 years later, where she is then proposed to, and she pulls literally the exact same shit from the first movie, only a lot earlier. She basically says, "I can't fall in love like this," only this time her actions spear the conflict of the entire movie and not just the ending, on top of Columbus sleeping with the first woman that comes in contact with him. But she did actively ditch her makeshift family of over 6 years over a wedding proposal that really doesn't matter in the context of a zombie apocalypse, taking her sister along with her to go literally nowhere of note, unlike Pacific Playland in the first movie, to accomplish the goal of throwing a fit. There was no destination, there was no path, just like this movie has really no clear goal. She took a rebellious teenager who wanted to run away from her family and other parental figures, and also put themselves in danger by thinning their numbers despite knowing what running off on their own had done before. Wichita's only purpose in the movie is to be a driving force to create more conflict, just as much as Columbus. Being irrational was more annoying than disappointing for me for the both of them, especially since this involves Little Rock. While Little Rock is the only one who really changes at all, since she cannot be the tiny, badass little girl with a gun, shifting her to become a rebellious teenager instead. Having her be completely okay with ditching her father figure and basically brother-in-law just for a chance at maybe meeting some other people her age, especially a guy, despite never meeting any other survivors over the last 6 years. But you know, she's a teenager and she has to go run off with teenagers, so that plot has to happen. It doesn't feel like this was a part of her character development. It was just, oh, she's a teenager, she wants to run off with other teenagers, despite, you know, it being a zombie apocalypse. It really accentuated how much of her character really didn't have anything to offer except to be like, oh, she's a younger person, we're gonna do what we think is best to represent a child/teenager. It feels like the characters weren't ever meant to be where they are mentally 6 years in, but because Abigail Breslin had visibly aged, as any 13-year-old would do by their 20s, a time skip was necessary to occur. Nothing seemed to change about the characters though. It's like their development in the week or two time span of the first movie had been completely erased, even after they had been together for 72 months. Yes, they function well to take out groups of zombies as an effective combat unit, but we only really see that displayed in the intro and the RV rooftop scene, even though some of the zombie kills would have definitely got them bitten. But as people and characters, they were stunted hellaciously. It was as if story ideas and plot elements originally intended for the failed TV series were used to supersede anything the sequel had to offer when it came to its characters and plot. What do I mean by that? Well, most of the plots laid out wouldn't make any sense given the context of the main characters if they actually lived throughout 6 years of this kind of zombie apocalypse, neither for any of the side characters to even exist at this point, excluding the badass romantic interest Nevada and maybe the copycats, and serve to just be annoying. It also doesn't work for the mutating zombies concept that was introduced to not destroy everyone that wasn't prepared or having the mutations utilized more than their scarce or rushed portion. proportions. Now, we do get decent zombie kills, and the slapstick comedy of the zombies and the bloodiness ensuing from them is always a welcome charm and laugh. I'll always appreciate more zombie entertainment, as Columbus puts it, but everything revolving around the moments getting to the zombie carnage were just riddled with one joke that worked and the rest either being references or lol random humor followed by dumb decisions one after another. The major plot points and locales of the movie feel slapped together with much less cohesion than the first film, all just kind of happening as if the movie was haphazardly strung together by the plots of most of the episodes from the cancelled television spin-off. For example, an episode in the White House, an episode about how stupid proposing is in a zombie apocalypse, growing up in a zombie apocalypse, a mall episode, one where the group meets their doppelgangers, an Elvis episode, Tally Gets a Girlfriend episode, and an episode about a colony of pacifists? Oh, what would ensue? Which I'm going to reiterate a lot during this video, but how can there be pacifists 6 years into a zombie apocalypse? It just feels disjointed for them to just go from one to another of these ideas without a week-long wait or credits to split them up in between. They feel like cheesy episode ideas. Now, the overall plot being to find Little Rock after the group is split up, hopscotching between every locale to interact with a random annoying character or group of characters, each place being perfectly intact with running electricity and not feeling whatsoever like it's been in a zombie apocalypse. Not only that, but for over half a decade, especially with everything stemming from the Hound Dog Hotel. Little Rock ditches Wichita to go to Graceland? Why would she go there? Wouldn't Little Rock actively avoid Elvis's house because of how much Tallahassee shoved Elvis down her throat, while the hipster she was trying to impress said that Elvis was a racial fraud? So why would they go there and then ditch the car to go hike to a hipster colony? Why would they lean towards going to Graceland except to just have an episode of Elvis references? Why the obsession with having vegans and pacifists take up the majority of the supporting cast? And when it's not that, just carbon copying your main cast. Each new character introduced as a pair for the original cast, or in Columbus and Wichita's case, the dumb blonde weird love triangle, feels like narrative bloat that does not expand much on anyone's story that we know of except to make roadblocks, plot contrivances, and maybe have a scene of this new character just going, haha, I got weed, or haha, I'm so stupid. The interesting part of the OG movie was how, outside of flashbacks and cutaways, there were never any other survivors and interactions with other people outside the core four and Bill Murray. It worked well for its own good, as it was just about survival and finding family and purpose. The second movie forgets that there is purpose in the first place. Adding all of these new characters kinda accentuates how much of a lightning in the bottle creation it was for the main cast for these four characters, where any newer characters that come into the fray are just ill-fitted additions. Hell, I mean, we have Columbus, fucking the dumbest airheaded girl possible. That was another thing that grinded my gears. She shouldn't be alive for the sheer stupidity she wields and how unnecessary her inclusion is that she imposes. How does a dumb blonde like that survive in a freezer off and on for 6 years? That does not make sense. Especially if you think about it, there are smart zombies called Hawkins out there, and they would definitely outsmart somebody like this. You can't introduce a super smart zombie in the same movie that you introduce a super dumb survivor. How did she survive? Her presence is consistently grating with her Valley Girl way of talking, her overly dumb blonde jokes like, why is this called the Oval Office? And her dressing and acting like she time traveled from a 2009 Forever 21 store. Madison does not lend to the comedy of the film well. She just adds to the disappointing annoyance that I feel almost every few minutes. And she is just a one-note character, and that accentuates what's wrong with a lot of the supporting cast in this movie. Everyone wanted her to die because she was just annoying. But you know what they do? They fake out her death after she has a nut allergy that has her display zombie-like symptoms, only for Columbus to not kill her, which that doesn't make sense because he's the zombie rules guy. But I guess because she let him fuck him, that he was like, you know what, I'll let you live. That doesn't make any sense. She is just an empty vessel for the dumb slutty blonde jokes we've heard ad nauseum in every other piece of media for years now. But you know what's worse than that? That the director Fleischer said he wants to make a standalone movie sequel of her and only her with Berkeley, the other pain-in-the-ass character. A hipster, down-to-earth musician pacifist that feels like he was just added to slap in weed references because you know what? Seth Rogen's weed, lol, can never go out of style. His character not serving to do anything except be labeled a poser late into the movie, have Tallahassee launch into a meltdown over the mention of a pacifist, and for him to just bring the concept of lol pacifists in a zombie apocalypse? What'll they think of next? As if people like this would even be alive from the halted culture of 2009. He doesn't contribute anything to the plot just as much as Madison does, except being an empty character to force the plot to two areas, the Elvis Hotel and Babylon. The Elvis Hotel giving birth to the only tolerable character of Nevada, as she is basically just a gender swap of Tallahassee, is fine in its own regard, but the addition of Albuquerque and Flagstaff as mirrors of Tallahassee and Columbus just shows the limit of the ideas had about new characters by the writers. We finally get other people for the cast to interact with, and they are just worse versions of themselves. Much like Double Tap is a worse version of its first movie. These two new dudes basically being the great value brands of characters we love, from the rules being commandments to speech patterns and mannerisms being verbatim to effective ways of killing zombies and whatnot makes for okay comedy at first. But they're killed off almost immediately to say, hey, our survivors are better. And honestly, it just feels like a TV show that likes to just reset everything to the status quo. By the end of the episode, Albuquerque and Flagstaff's only real purpose was to bring a monster truck into the picture so we can have a badass CGI zombie killing scene in Babylon. Speaking of Babylon, if you watch my zombie sins on Zombieland Double Tap, you'll know just how much I hate that this is an integral concept for a movie they took 10 years to make. A pacifist colony that has converted a tower into their safe haven, despite their walled perimeter being easily scalable by zombies that can climb with no form of offense or defense, as their whole philosophy of conflict avoidance would mean one zombie attack would have had them all dead by now. How the hell is there a pacifist meme in a 6-year-long zombie apocalypse movie? How are they sitting here saying shit like poverty, sexism, social injustice? We're here to quell those. Dude, have those been issues this far in? You guys are all under the same umbrella of an idea where you guys are just camped together. Human society has been dead for 6 years. Where is this coming from? Why are people still acting like this shit is still around? Wouldn't survival be a priority? How would pacifists survive this long in? And why would our group of survivors surrender their guns that they have survived so long with to a bunch of pacifists that end up melting down firearms? They said they were going to do it and they do it, and then they act surprised that they do it. How can this colony even prevent themselves from being bursted into by a horde of zombies? And why would a gun-toting redneck like Tallahassee agree to this? None of this as a final area, a final setting, a final plot piece, a final thing for things to happen. I'm running out of things to say, but how does this make sense? It's just like they had the idea of, wouldn't it be funny if pacifists were in a zombie apocalypse? That's it. That's the whole concept of this. Oh, I get it. I know why. So there could be a forced reason for our survivors to be gunless against the new tough zombie mutations known as the T-800s. Tallahassee decides to leave the group near the end of the movie at the pacifist compound because, you know what, it's not his MO to be near a bunch of hippies, despite his current MO ever since the end of Zombieland 1 was to look after his new family. He then runs into a horde of T-800s that just completely ignore him. You know, T-800s, the super smart, strong, and fast zombies that the writers forgot other zombie variants existed, and now we have hundreds of these specific types swarming to Babylon because they are super strong and we have have to build up some kind of conflict. Gotta feel sorry for the Homers, the Hawkings, and the Ninja. Forgot about that one. The finale of a horde of T-800s swarming Babylon because of all the lights and fireworks felt super lame. Why the hell is the day the group comes here is the one night fireworks and lights are used and actually attract not just zombies, but super zombies? And wouldn't it be a big rule for Columbus, the guy obsessed with zombie survival rules, to be really against fireworks? Something that would easily draw tons of attention from all over in the middle of the night. For being this meta thing, a zombie movie that knows all about zombie media, it sure likes to skim over the actual important stuff. But yeah, sure, let's have a rule that Columbus wants wet naps. The finale consists of a bunch of weirdness to get to action scenes that were blatantly poorly done CGI. Tallahassee driving all the way back, climbing dozens of stories, and being able to make a plan for near unkillable zombies is so crammed together. Without guns, they decide to just funnel them through the bottom and fire up biodiesel fuel? You're telling me these guys know how to make biodiesel? Was there never a defense procedure for this commune that a redneck had to come running back to tell him what to do? Well, the fuel fails to ignite the infected and the movie acts like all the main characters are about to die, as if it's the cliffhanger for the end of the season that never happened. But then they are saved by Nevada in the monster truck randomly, because apparently she knew exactly where to go, and you know what, she's a badass. I mean, we had the men save the women in the first movie, so we needed to do the gender reversal. So we end up seeing all these zombies killed in a very blatantly CGI set of affairs as they are killed off. I don't know why they couldn't have done more practical effects. They end up all getting out scot-free despite the monster truck being tipped over, and then they make a new plan to funnel the zombies off the cliff up high on top of the building to kill them easily, because gravity can kill these. It just feels like they wrote themselves into a corner with the whole T-800s thing, since they are so durable and strong, and having a horde of them attacking. It's like they forgot they are strong, fast, and smart. But you know what? Let's mimic that one Treehouse of Horror finale where all the clones jump off the cliff because they're chasing one donut in the sky. I thought these guys were meant to be smart. We're saving that for the Hawkings, the zombies that we forgot existed, so we can have a Homer trail in at the end. We get a half-assed symbolism of Little Rock acting like she was on their side the whole time when she kills the last zombie with the White House gun that Tallahassee gave her, even though a colony of pacifists talking about gangbangs and wanting to touch each other all the time definitely would have patted her down for that weapon, but whatever. Afterwards, once all the zombies are dead, oh, there's a Homer by the way. Afterwards, when they start celebrating, they do more fireworks and use more lighting and start making more noise again, which basically this imagery shows you that no one learned a lesson. Babylon and the characters that culminate here, even the OG cast, are a perfect representation of having an idea, but not feeling like it actually fits in the universe. It was just for lols. Everyone just rushes to the end, and because they avoided death with the horde of zombies, none of the storylines they struggled with ever pay off. Wichita still ditched Columbus and put her sister in danger. Columbus still was unfaithful and banged the dumbest slut character possible, only to be a cunt about it to his girlfriend for most of the movie. And then the both of them end up forgetting all that happened and then just decide, hey, let's get married anyways because we saved the pacifists. We've learned a lesson. What the hell have you learned about in your relationship except both of you are horrible people, especially Columbus? Tallahassee got the girl despite nothing really connecting them besides Elvis and the need for Tallahassee to have a romantic interest, so Nevada decides to be one of them from now on. Little Rock ended up with nothing gained from the movie except to have a pistol and to be the only character not with a recognizable actor name that barely talks, now more alone than before since her father figure has someone, but she now doesn't. She is the only one that doesn't have a significant other. The pacifist colony did not learn to nut up or shut up and learn to fight. If you were gonna use pacifists, why couldn't that have been a lesson for them? Instead, they're just dropped completely. And then we have the dumb blonde and dumb hippie who were rewarded for their stupidity throughout the entire movie with being able to fall in love with each other, and then that's it for them. They got to have a happy ending. What was the point of all of the story up until now? There was no point to it in the end. They just go off into the sunset, everyone's happy, movie, let's forget everything happened in the sequel of this movie. We just have a new chick, that's all that matters. It was a movie with no clear direction in front of it except that it was a sequel to a cult classic, and that is what it relied on most. And to not spend too much more time here, other elements of the sequel that disappointed me was the fact that it relied on being a sequel so much more rather than a complete movie. I spent a majority of the movie in my first watch going, I understood that reference, since many lines were just callbacks to the first. Well, basically we wanted more of the same because we've been waiting for so long, don't get me wrong. It was nice to hear nut up or shut up again and all those other lines, but the references fall flat after repeat viewings and end up making you realize how shallow it is compared to the heart of the original that seemed to have been forgotten in the many years of development hell the franchise had been on, like even down to the very names of the characters. The original naming scheme of the characters after destination cities made sense since they were getting to know each other and even expected to only stay connected until their destinations were met. It was a cute charm to everyone just going by those names. By the end of the first movie, Wichita says her name was Krista, bringing the notion that they were ready to drop the name shtick and go by their real names. Not only is that disregarded in the second film, but now every new person instantly goes by city and state names, as if there is some kind of hive mind intelligence known as the writers, telling them it's an unwritten rule that every zombie survivor must abide by. It was cool and made sense in the context of the first film, but now it just feels like an obligation to do so in the franchise of one movie. That was their names, and now they have to stick to it because it's Zombieland. And then we have Nevada, who should have been named Las Vegas if they were going to go that route because of the whole Elvis thing if you're going to stick to themes and elements. But Nevada mirrors Wichita's cute little reveal moment of her real name in the first movie, except this time Nevada says her city that she's from is Reno, not saying her actual name. This really embodies that there isn't that kind of heart in the film, and they were just more interested in carrying a copied plot element from the first movie rather than heartfelt moments. Hell, they were still so psyched that they got Bill Murray for the first film 10 years ago that characters that had nothing to do with the first movie were referencing it. Nevada saying people get murrayed. They did the callback to Bill Murray being killed like it was broadcast on televisions or social media, although I have no clue how information about Bill Murray's murder by one dude spread since it was only witnessed by 4 people 2 months into the zombie apocalypse and kept to that group of people for 6 years. It's like they couldn't go without mentioning Bill Murray and reminding us that Bill Murray was in the first film, especially with the credits going back to a noticeably older Bill Murray as the zombie outbreak started on day 0, with Bill Murray, instead of being his own person, was just talking about Garfield and quoting movies he had been in before, like Caddyshack and Ghostbusters. Hell, they said in the development of the Zombieland sequel in the first couple years when they were working on it that they wanted to get more superstar cameos, but now they are just settling for rehashing Bill Murray as much as possible. On the note of rehashing, when it comes to zombie media and continuing franchises in the zombie zeitgeist, one thing that is extremely difficult to do is keep the zombies relevant enough to be a clear danger as the story continues. At the very start of the sequel, Columbus describes how their zombies have changed to be more of a threat, creating dumb homers, smart Hawkings, stealthy ninjas, and eventually tough T-800s. However, throughout the film, we only get 2 to 3 gags with Homer, a brief encounter with the Hawking. I mean, the Hawking was smart enough to rip the eyeball out of a dead body and use it in an eye scanner, and then Hawkings are never used to that degree. I mean, the only scene I remember them being used in was just for them to dodge attacks, but that was a T-800. And then we have the ninjas that are very stealthy, and that was just one bite on Madison's shoe. That's all they are utilized for. The ninjas are rarely used. And that aspect felt incredibly disappointing. You introduced all these new types of zombies, and then we barely see them. We started off the movie thinking zombies would be more cool and engaging, but they were just for the characters to name drop the variants and not really be any kind of danger. Maybe they were being super meta, and not having the ninjas ever show up just means the zombies were just doing their jobs. Now, why have that intro of the 3 special zombies that are out in the wilds when they barely have any plot relevance, and especially when T-800s are introduced halfway through the movie as some rare big anomaly, only for them to come by the hundreds all at once for the finale. The first T-800 tanking multiple gunshots was super cool, yet when the copycat survivors turn into the T-800s, they are basically on the same level of lethality as the apartment zombie that Columbus had to fight in his flashback in Zombieland 1. It's like the writers played zombie video games in the 2010s for the first time and realized zombie variants would be cool, but forgot to write them into the script and kind of force the word T-800s into the final horde to make it seem more deadly, or just kind of whip together the intro to make it seem like there was going to be more to the zombies than it let on. It relied on the zombies relying on the stupidity of the survivors to make anything happen, with the variants doing nothing else to add to that. The ending to Double Tap was just them trying to one-up the original, with the characters doing the exact same stupid thing in the first finale of making tons of lights and noise to have a huge horde showdown, and then having them kill them in fun, creative, but dangerous ways. That would be from the roller coaster, and now to a monster truck. But in the second movie, these are super zombies, not just regular zombies. We're not talking about just clown zombies. Honestly, the major plot elements with any kind of action or memorability in Double Tap were literally just carbon copies of the first, just with a few tweaks and memes added to them. There was a reason the first movie carried with it more memorability. It had heartfelt moments that felt genuine, character motivations that, despite being a little dumb at points, felt developed and thought out. Maybe I'm just more cynical than most, but they waited too long for a sequel and let their massive amount of ideas they had over the years weigh them heavily down, allowing the fans' ideas of their characters to be their driving force into something like the current philosophy of Simpsons episode writing. What if blank interacted with blank, with nothing else driving that narrative? It's because of the randomization of plot, stunted growth of the original characters, and extremely hollow and worthless side characters that Double Tap doesn't have as much staying power as its predecessor. So, in the end, that is why Zombieland Double Tap is a disappointing sequel. That about wraps up my disgruntled look into my second dose of zombified sequelitis for you. What about Double Tap did you not like? What did you think it did well? Let me know down in the comments. A discussion is always to be had. Special thanks to my new editor Chago, aka Quick Flicks, for helping me get these videos into your feed. Check out his channel for recaps of movies and shows. It's a real fun time. And special thanks to you for watching, and especially to my patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who are cool enough to have donated to be featured on this spicy list here. Next, we are going to be tackling the Train to Busan sequel Peninsula and how bad it was. So until next time, I'm Zach Cass, aka Wow Such Gaming. Never forget to stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay wow.